It's been about 2 years since Triple H took control as head of creative for WWE, and a lot of people have much enjoyed his booking. They've greatly preferred it to previous owners as Vince McMahon booked it, as they felt he had nothing really to give anymore to the wrestling industry, and was very happy that Triple H became the new head of creative. And then, he's had his lows where there have been shows that haven't been as entertaining, such as SummerSlam last year, but most of the way around, Triple H has had very positive reviews from fans who were also there to see the Vince McMahon era as well. However, he does have his flaws, and those are what I'm going to be going into today. Hello, everybody, and today what we're going to be looking at is Triple H's biggest problems as a wrestling booker. Now, he has a few major problems I'm going to cover, and one minor problem that was more a Vince thing, but still rolls over into his era a little bit. And we're going to be just quickly glossing over those now and then going into them as a deeper look a little later on. So we're going to be looking at his slow storylines, lack of surprises, too focused on some storylines, world titles only changing hands at big shows, and as the smaller one, a bit of repetitive booking. As I said, that's more of a Vince thing. However, it has happened a bit in the Triple H era as well, talking, Raw, Summer 2023, SmackDown nowadays. But as I said, we will get to that in due time. We're going to be going in that order. I will have the segments listed off in the description, so you can just skip to that bit if you haven't seen it yet. So we're going to get started with those slow storylines. Yeah, they're slow. So what I wanted to say with this is that a lot of feuds and, culminations and things have just taken way longer than they've needed to. For example, the Judgment Day in 2023, mind you, we're saying like, oh, are we going to break up, and building towards a very obvious looking breakup, and are still doing that to this day a whole year later. Think about it. Last year it was Finn Balor challenging Seth freaking Rollins for the World Heavyweight title. And they were like, oh, is Damian going to cost him? Because Damian keeps costing Finn accidentally. Is this going to lead to a breakup? No, it didn't. And they're still doing that, just with the roles reversed, where Finn occasionally doesn't cost Damian, but tries to help Hurts, but Damian ends up winning anyways. And it annoys Damian that Finn is trying to help him out, and so are the rest of Judgment Day. And they're still trying to run this angle. I just don't think it's working is the problem, because you need to pull the trigger. Triple H has an issue with pulling the trigger. Gun to someone's head, he's like, do I want to kill him? I don't know. I don't know if I want to do that yet. If Triple H was having a hostage, he would be terrible at trying to follow through on things. He'd be like, I don't know if I want to kill my hostage yet. I need to make sure that we have enough of a rivalry built up, even though it's going to take 7 years. And nonetheless, there are a few other things that I listed on this little note sheet that I have that I'm going to go over. Why has Austin Theory not turned on Grayson Waller yet? They've been building this since at least the Elimination Chamber. And that was like 5-6 months ago. You need to start following through on these storylines. You need to start finishing them, or at least getting to the next stage of them, because this is a very simple storyline they've done thousands of times. Person and person make a tag team. Person in tag team makes other person in tag team feel bad. Person in tag team turns on other person in tag team. People in tag team fight each other a couple times. People in tag teams split off into varying rivalries and occasionally team up or fight one another again over the course of the following 10 years. It's happened a bazillion times over and over and over again. And for some reason, Triple H just doesn't want to do this one, because he's had this, Waller is using Theory, and they've been pushing that since Elimination Chamber. They won the tag team titles at Mania, and they're like, okay, we can keep going from this. Then they lost the tag team titles about a month ago, and now they're still trying to do this breakup angle. But they still haven't done it yet. And that's the biggest issue. You just need to pull the trigger and let it go. A lot of people have not talked about this because the Triple H always redeems himself and says, oh, but this is why that hasn't happened yet. For example, you can say, the Judgment Day breakup hasn't happened yet, but think about it. Damian had a really good cash-in. Rhea Ripley had a great world title reign. Dominic is a great heel, and now there's this Liv Dom Rhea thing, and he's saying like, oh yeah, see these positive things that kind of overshroud the overwhelming negative thing that's underneath. Yay! And that's a big issue with his booking that I do not enjoy. A few more that I'm going to just quickly rattle through. That LA Knight and Logan Paul should have had a match ages ago. I don't know why we've waited all the way until SummerSlam for this. This feud should have been a WrestleMania feud. It should have been Logan Paul, LA Knight, US title, Mania. But then we had LA AJ, which wasn't terrible, but it was fine. Then we had the triple threat, which was pretty good. And then again, we have this, oh, these are good things that are offsetting the fact that there are these underlying bad things that are a really big issue right now. But these good things are making sure that you don't remember that those exist right now. So, I hope you're happy. And then, Otis attacked Chad Gable 3 months after the feud was as hot as it could be. I'm not saying that one's bad. That one is still good, but it wasn't struck when the iron was hot. Why haven't they had a match yet? Should have turned to Clash at the Castle, match at Money in the Bank. Very simple. Or SummerSlam. And that just hasn't happened, and that's one of the biggest issues, as I've said. And remember, if we go back a few months, Santos Escobar versus Rey Mysterio, I thought about this while watching SmackDown, should have happened at a PLE. You could say your Elimination Chambers, your Manias, your Backlashes. It was on a SmackDown before Mania. Just there on SmackDown. It's like they just discarded it because they didn't care that it was going to happen, even though this is what they were trying to do with Dom and Rey this whole time. It was just the Don Ray storyline again, and they just did nothing with it. That's a bit of a disappointment. But nonetheless, these slow storylines do need to start quickening their pace a little bit. Then we move on to lack of surprises. Now, this one isn't as big of an issue. This is probably fourth. However, I do think if you look at the surprises over the past 2 years, there's really not that many you can come up with. Like, obviously, you have CM Punk. That's huge. That's absolutely insane. This is back to my thing of really, really good thing offsets underlying bad thing, therefore you forget about it. But other than Punk, what do you have? You have Sammy beating Gunther, the debut of Damage Control, Rey Mysterio randomly winning the US title for literally no reason. Like, remember how useless that US title run was? It was just so Logan Paul could get the title without facing Theory. And that was the only reason it happened. And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying this is like the only transitional champion we've had in so long. It's kind of crazy. And it's looking like DIY might be transitional champions as well, which is terrible, but we're going to get to that later on. Like Ray B Theory, as I said, the Wyatt 6, that was a surprisingly good angle. It didn't, a lot of people were kind of nervous, like, oh, are they going to do it right? Are they going to, honor Bray helpfully? But then they did. They were able to successfully do that. And I'm not saying that this is a bad thing that they were able to do that. I'm saying, like, that's a great thing. But you need more of that because the surprises have been good, but few and far between. Because, you got Punk in November, you got Damage Control, that's like a year and a half before that. You got Sammy and Gunther a few months after Punk. Mysterio beating Theory was relatively close to the Punk thing, like 2 months beforehand. And then Wyatt 6 was what was that now, 2 months ago? And nonetheless, like, they're good, but you just don't have enough of them to make them feel like, oh, wow, it's such a surprising moment. And Vince had a lot of them, they just weren't very good. So we've seen that Triple H can do great surprises, he just doesn't do them enough, and that's the problem here. Because, again, Triple H has that long-term storytelling method of, oh, you want a surprise? Awesome. You're just going to need to wait a few months for that before I can figure out how I want to do it. So, honestly, I'm not mad technically about this one. This one I can be a little more lenient towards, but a few more surprises here and there would be nice to see. Then the third thing we're going to be looking at, stories with too much or too little focus. Now, I'm going to talk about the too little focus first, and this is just on SmackDown, by the way. I didn't look at Raw because Raw is like 8 times better than SmackDown. Because Raw, you have different people getting on the show almost every week. You have new groups being pushed relatively well. The trio of Baszler, Stark, and Deville. You have the Sheamus, Braun, Ilya, Sammy, everybody else in that IC title bonanza, Bronson Reed. And nonetheless, you have a lot of people on Raw being pushed. But when you go to SmackDown, it's not very good. And a lot of people that are just not focused on enough or purely forgotten are the Street Profits. That's a big one. Yes, they were on SmackDown, and yes, they made it quite far in the Gauntlet match. When was the last time they were really pushed heavily, in that tag team title scene? It was 2022 when they challenged for the belts at Money in the Bank, I'd say. But ever since, they really haven't done anything to be in that tag team title scene, which is a real disappointment because they're an incredible team. Yes, I don't want them to stay together. I want Montez and Angelo to get their respective singles runs. Honestly, Montez is a future world champion, and Dawkins could make his play for that as well. But they just don't have enough oomph behind them right now, even though they are still pretty over, to have that because they haven't had enough focus on them. And then you can look at the same thing in tag team title action with the women's tag titles scene as a whole. Alba and Isla are forgotten as champions because no one cares about the women's tag team titles. Maybe if you actually made them, a centerpiece of your show or had some booking up plans around them. But all the scene there, Jade and Bianca, yes, they're over, but you're not really interested in seeing them win the tag team titles because, yeah, like it's cool, they're champions, but okay, like what does that belt matter? Like the Speed Championship. I didn't write that down on my notes, but that too, the Speed title. Who cares about the Speed title? And then Legado del Fantasma. Think about this. 4 months ago, they were a pretty big, staple on SmackDown. They were consistently beating teams. They had a feud with the LWO, and they were at least doing something. Now, Santos lost to LA, was really nothing in that storyline. Just got beat up and then helped out Logan afterwards. Okay. And then Angel and Berto lost immediately in the gauntlet match later on in the night against a team that I don't think has ever tagged together in Cruz and Corbin, maybe once before. But I do think that there are a lot of teams and groups on SmackDown that just don't have enough oomph behind them and haven't been able to get put on TV because of the certain stories with too much focus. Now, I wrote 3 down here. I'm going to give you a guess. I want you to guess one of the things that I've written down, and we'll see if you can guess correctly. If you guessed the Bloodline, you are correct because I wrote Bloodline, Bloodline, and Bloodline because the Bloodline are on SmackDown way too much for their aura level. Honestly, your aura level should contribute to how much you're on TV. Cody Rhodes, okay, he's your world champion. He's got pretty good promo skills and is pretty good in the ring. I can understand. Sure, he can be on SmackDown 2, maybe 3 times in a segment. I'm fine with that. Last SmackDown, the Bloodline were in not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 segments. 4! They opened the show. They closed the show. They were in the gauntlet match, and Cody talked about him in his promo. Over and over and over again. And the only person in that group with any aura at all is Jacob Fatu. And I was speaking with my dad about this. Hi, Dad, if you're watching. But Solo Sikoa has a bit of aura, but he has that ticking aura. So, like in Apex Legends, Caustic, when he tosses his gas grenade, it will do like 3 damage, 3 damage, 4 damage, 4 damage, 5 damage, and so on and so forth, ticking like that. His Solo Sikoa's aura ticks up in the exact same way, just very slowly. It'll go, up 1, up 1, up 1, up 1 over the course of like a month. Like 1 week equals +1 aura. But it's not doing enough to make him worth 4 segments on a 2-hour show. If you're going to do that, make the show 3 hours long because I'm not trying to see this Temu Bloodline on my screen 4 times in 2 hours. That's just tedious. But I do think that there are a lot of underutilized talent that we'll get to at the very end with that smaller one that just don't have enough shine because of the Bloodline taking up so much time on SmackDown. And if you look at 1 week prior to this one, they were, taking out Cody Rhodes. They were taking out Randy Orton. They were taking out, this, that, and the other thing. They were in a tag team match against some other group, and they're just always on TV. And yes, I get that if you want to make them seem like they're good, you're trying to push them as a group. But when it's too much, that's a little, you can't be doing 3-4 segments for this mid-aura group. Then we move on to the last big notion that I want to talk about, world titles changing hands. Now, the last time all the world titles changed hands on a show that was not, and these are the 3 rules, a Saudi show, WrestleMania, or SummerSlam. And here they are. So the WWE title, the last time that happened, was the Royal Rumble 2022 when Bobby Lashley won it. Okay, that's not too far away. It's almost 3 years up to this point. But okay, sure. Yeah, it's not that bad. The Women's World title on Raw in 2024. But that's because Rhea was hurt and, she had to lose the belt. It had to be crowning a champion. So I guess that one doesn't really count. However, that's what happened to be there. So Becky Lynch on Raw in 2024. Sure. Then the Women's WWE title was a title swap with Charlotte Flair in 2021 for Becky Lynch. A title swap. And before that was Nikki ASH's cash-in on Raw as well, both in 2021. So, we're getting to like really long ago. This is clocking in at nearly 4 years ago at this point. The World Heavyweight title has never changed hands like that because there was winning it at a Saudi show and then Mania. So that's negated. And then the furthest away was the Universal title, which last changed hands on a non-Saudi WrestleMania or SummerSlam at Payback 2020 when Roman Reigns won the belt. That's nearly 5 years ago now. That's insane. Because you need to start making B shows not B shows. Because a lot of issues arise where, like Payback and Fastlane last year, nobody really needed to watch because they're a B show. So what? I don't think any titles changed hands. I might not remember correctly. I can take a look right now. But what is the purpose of having the show if you're not going to book it like a pay-per-view? Because, like Shinsuke and Seth is like a fine match to have, I guess. There's no real reason for it to exist. Now, I'm on the Payback 2023 page. Let's see, the first one, okay, the tag team titles change hands when the Judgment Day beat Kevin and Sami. Okay, that's one title change. And how about on Fastlane? Let's see, there are 2 title changes, both for the Raw and SmackDown tag team titles combined. Yeesh, you're only changing the SmackDown and Raw tag team titles on both of these shows? What's the reason for me to watch it then? If I can just watch the weekly episode of Raw and be like, oh, cool, there's new tag team champions. Cool. What does it matter? Because the tag team title scene really hasn't been in that same place as it should be since WrestleMania 39, maybe, because otherwise it's just been, let's have matches for these titles that basically mean nothing up to this point. Even though people like DIY hold the belts, I don't feel that much from them because they're not being put in those main events, not getting showcased on pay-per-views because the tag team titles haven't been put on a pay-per-view or PLE since WrestleMania 40, which has really devalued the hype behind them, which has made them just feel not as important in the grand scheme of things. And then otherwise, you just really need to book them more to be doing things. And that's why these titles just don't mean anything. These B shows don't mean anything. And these world titles just change them on a B show for once, so it's not a B show anymore. You can make it booked like an A show, so you have to be tuning into every single PLE, like, oh, maybe a title could change hands here, and make that more of a norm so that it's not just, oh, it's a B show, nothing's happening here. And fun fact, the last time a world title changed hands at the Big 4 pay-per-view Survivor Series was 9 years ago in 2015. It was the Shield... I think, no, it was Sheamus cashing in on Reigns, who had just beat Ambrose in the final of a tournament. Yeah. And then the last one that we're going to be looking at is repetitive booking. This does apply to the storylines with too much focus section. And I'm just going to quote what I wrote down here. And I quote, "The Bloodline, Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton, and Kevin Owens and company, you know who I mean, seem to be getting on TV way too much, while underutilized talent like Candice LeRae, Giovanni Vinci, Indy Hartwell, Pretty Deadly, Shinsuke Nakamura, and Tegan Nox can't get as over as they can be because they have little to no TV time." And this is a big issue, as I said earlier, because these groups are taking up so much time, you can't give these newer, younger, or hungrier talent as much oomph behind them because they can't get on TV because the Bloodline, Cody, RKO, etc. are just taking up too much on a 2-hour show. And that's just for SmackDown, by the way. So, what do you think? Do you think that these are Triple H's biggest issues? Is there something I missed? Is there some giant glaring issue I somehow glossed over? Or gaping success that I've somehow missed? Let me know down in them comments down below. Make sure you have a good day, good evening, good night, good morning, good dog, good dusk, good whatever. Make sure to watch any former or future episodes on this channel. Oh, and Def fucking Rebel. And goodbye.